Welcome to the Art Studio Insights podcast, where we demystify the creative process and exchange ideas with career-minded artists, with your hosts, Adriana M.A. and
Jackie Sanders. We're two emerging artists sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our journey. So if you are not already, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you will be notified when we drop a new episode every day. On today's episode, we are super excited to be talking about the documents that every career-minded artist needs. So this is a topic that we covered in our Level Up Artists membership back in September. So we really wanted to share an overview summary of what these documents are. Of course, within the membership, we go way more into the nitty-gritty of details and prompts and all those things. But just as an overview today, we want to cover what these 4 core documents are, how they are different, and why you need them as a career-minded artist.
Yeah, so first off, let's talk about why you need them, right? You might be like, oh no, more paperwork.
Yeah.
Definitely necessary. If you're a career-minded artist, you're a business-driven artist, you are going to need these things. If you're applying to applications, if you're reaching out to galleries, if you are answering any open calls, residencies, yeah, these documents come up time and time again. And the best way to kind of think about them before the overwhelm takes over is to realize all these documents really help do is, to someone that's not familiar with you or your work, it just lets them know what you are about and what your artwork is about. So it's almost like a giant business card,
Right,
if you will,
exactly.
of what you're all about. So yeah, so that's in a nutshell, essentially why you need them.
Right, exactly. And when it boils down to it, all applications are different, especially when you're applying for a solo exhibition versus a group exhibition or submitting information for a publication. But realistically, it boils down to 4 core documents. So the first one is an artist statement. So this is a document that gives the reader more context about your artwork and really is a way that you can show people, okay, what is your artwork about? They're normally like 75 to 150 words, can change given the context of what the application is, but an artist statement is really focused on the artwork itself.
Yep. The other one really important is going to be your artist biography. So this is where you share your journey in your words, your trajectory, the story of, how you became the artist that you are today. It's generally written in first or third person based on taste, right?
Yes.
And that one tends to be much longer. We're looking at 250 and 400 words, which, by the way, these word counts we're sharing with you is based on our experience with applications. So we're just kind of giving you a range from what we see. Obviously, every application is different. So you may find one that wants a bio that's like 5 pages long.
Right.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Right, exactly. The next thing is your CV. And so we'll go into the details later in this episode, but realistically, your CV are like the dry facts about you and your history as an artist. So it's essentially a list of your prior education, exhibition history, related experiences. So maybe you have a day job that is similar or applies in the creative field. Also different recognitions or awards that you've received. Basically any type of experience so people can quickly catch up and be like, hey, what does your art career looked like up until this point? Dry facts. Normally they're about 1 to 2 pages. I'd say 3 or 4 if you've been a artist for, let's say, 20 to 30 plus years. But realistically, it's about 1 page for every 10 years of experience.
Yep. And the last one that we have is going to be the About Me section. So this is just a brief description. It's one that you can answer in less than a minute, generally distilled from a combination of your bio and statement. You're looking at 75 to 150 words. Another way to think about it, it's similar in a way to like a elevator pitch, except you're not necessarily selling. You're just more very briefly describing, answering that question when somebody goes, what do you do for a living? That little about me can help you answer that in like 1 to 2 sentences.
Yeah. And so, as with all of our other podcast episodes, we will also have a PDF linked in both of our blog posts for this episode that will break down each of these 4 documents even more. So if you go to the link in the bio and go to either one of our blogs, you can download a free PDF there so you don't have to remember all the information about these 4 documents. But for today's episode, we are going to dive in a little bit deeper. So the artist statement, again, this is the document that really shows what your art is about. This is really your first necessity when marketing your artwork, because I feel like so many times we're so in the creative process, right? And so much in that conversation and our own thoughts that it's really hard to like objectively look at your work, explain it to someone else. There are very obvious details that we completely overlook because like our eye is so accustomed to seeing certain things. So the artist statement is a great way that you can also clarify your thoughts about your artwork, stand back, take an objective look at your work, and also guide others' perceptions of your work. And really, there are multiple types of artist statements that you can have, some that are longer, some that are shorter. You can have different versions of it, maybe specific to a certain series. But everyone needs at least a general artist statement that talks about their body of work as a whole, concepts that they're exploring, their dominant medium, different tools, all of those things, which again, within our Level Up Artist membership, we really dive deep into all of these documents. We have videos every week that talk about the specifics, including writing tips and prompts and best practice guidelines, because they are changing. So you really need to follow certain guidelines when applying for certain applications and exhibitions to keep your application super strong. But the biggest takeaway that I would say if you're a career-minded artist starting an artist statement would be really just write out themes, stories, and concepts that you are exploring in your work and do a brain download. This is probably something Adriana and I talk about on several episodes, is like getting these ideas out of your head and just get it on paper. Don't think about the length limit. Don't try to filter it or critique what you're writing. Just get everything out of your head and refine it later, because your artist statement is going to be a document that's ever evolving, right? Just like as an artist and as your work evolves, so is your artist statement, because it needs to make sure that it's reflecting what you're exploring and also where your artwork is going to go. So your artist statement will change as your artwork changes. But realistically, the biggest thing that you want your artist statement to do is to have the viewer of your artwork more connected to your work after they read your artist statement. You almost, in an ideal situation, you want them to see your artwork on display, have a reaction to it, then read your artist statement, and maybe it shifts their perspective. Maybe it confirms or changes their perspective on what they see in the piece. And then that way, when they go and experience your work again, they have more insight, feel more connected to it and to you as an artist as well, which is a super, super powerful thing.
Yeah, it is. That artist statement basically lets you tell your story your own way about those pieces they're looking at. And a lot of times it'll give them the context that they're missing. Because as much as we would like to say our art speaks for itself, and it can in a certain way, it helps give them that extra flavor, that extra part of the story that they may be missing. So that's essentially what you're doing. No pressure. It's going to change 5 billion times. That means mine has changed 5 billion times already. But yeah, artist statements, not that bad. The bio, on the other hand, it may also change, but not as much. Because if you think about it, the bio, you're just basically telling the story of how you came to be. That being said, it doesn't mean you tell them every single thing. You know, this is not like full-blown biography, written a book about you type thing. Much, much shorter than that. But you do have the ability to tell the story your own way. You select what memories, what experiences highlight and are more relevant to your current journey, to your
Yeah.
current place as an artist, especially career-minded artist. So you get to curate essentially what you share, obviously everything true, everything legit, but you get to use the more relevant and interesting bits to put it together. And I will say, like, if at first you're like, I think my story is boring, talk to other artists, because a lot of times you may find that that story of how you came to be to you might seem like nothing, and then you talk it over with somebody else and they're like, actually, that was amazing, I didn't know you did that growing up, or whatever it is. So there's hope. But I do want to go into some of the elements that are comprised, or that make up a bio, because at first you might be like, I don't even know how to start with this thing. That's fine. Let me give you some basic elements and we'll just go from there. So we have, where were you born and or where are you located? We have influences, so your upbringing, what family ties do you have, experiences that may have influenced your work, your education. Did you go to art school? Are you self-taught, which we've talked as a misnomer, but we're going to go with it. Have you had any work experiences that are relevant to where you are now, or have enriched or helped your experience in some way, even if they're not tied to art 100%, but they may have led you there anyways? Your evolution. So how did you become an artist? Was there a specific wake-up moment that you realized, this is it, this is what I'm supposed to do? Maybe it was since you were a kid with crayons, who knows? But this all ties into your story. And impact. Oh, this one's usually pretty hard. Why do you make and share your art? Like, why do you go beyond that step of just doing it for you, for whatever, almost therapeutic reasons in a certain, or stress relieving role? Like, why do you take that extra step and share your art? So it's not like your bio has to have, 5 paragraphs out of each of these, but generally in bios we've seen, as well as our own, these are some of the topics that we want to make sure we cover to kind of give that reader, right, that viewer, kind of like that extra little piece of, so that's where that comes from. Like, now I can see the connection, and then help them connect with their art, even with your art, even more.
Right, exactly. And I think that's a good point in terms of like the artist statement and the artist bio do take a little bit of introspection and reflection in terms of the story you want to share as an artist and the mission and what you want what influence you want your art to have. And so again, having a brain download where you can just put, okay, here's everything I could include in a bio, but then you do get a curated of what makes the most sense and what is sharing a cohesive, consistent story with my artist statements. And understanding how those two documents work together can be tricky at times. And again, having other artists, like members of our Level Up artist community, like sharing and seeing, okay, this is really insightful, or you might want to replace this, is really helpful and is an ever evolving process. But a CV document is not exactly introspective because, like I said earlier, it can be very dry at times. And I think that's one way or one reason why many creatives almost can get intimidated by this document, because it feels very cold, very just, here are the facts, here are the dates listed out. But it is super, super important, both for applications and honestly for your own records. So when it boils down to it, an artist CV is a record of your professional experiences and artistic achievements used to apply for juried exhibitions, grants, awards, gallery shows, and all of those other things. But it's very similar to a resume, what most people consider a resume. But for creatives, it's a lot more detailed. So it's actually like a summary of everything you've ever done, which again can be very intimidating and can be like a roadblock for creatives when applying for these opportunities, especially if you don't have this document on hand when you start an application, because that is a huge roadblock. And so it does take some time in the beginning if you're starting from scratch, which is why within the Level Up artist community, we actually shared both the templates that we use. We show the exact structure, screen share the exact document that I work off of when applying to kind of bring the structure and intimidation away from the process. The exact formatting, what sections, how we lay it out. But my biggest suggestion for creatives is to create a master document. So this is something that honestly my mom instilled in me since I was like 16, which seems silly because I just had like lifeguarding on my CV. Like, I have 3 months of lifeguard experience during the summer. But she, being a very smart businesswoman, always talked about you need to update your CV like every quarter, so like every 3 months. And that's been super helpful as growing as an artist because it also serves as a resource for you. Let's say you're included in a group exhibition, including information like what's the name of the exhibition, where is it located, what day, what maybe the year that it was, or maybe even the month that it spanned. And of course, in the beginning, this can be relatively easy information to remember if you're a few months into your journey or even a few years. Like, oh, of course, how could I forget that? That was a huge milestone moment. But as you get into like 4, 5, 10 years down the line, it's impossible to remember all the details of all the things that you've been included. So having this document as a master, everything that you've ever done is super, super great for your own records. And then when you go to apply for different opportunities, again, you can curate what you include. So maybe past work experience is more relevant if you are applying to teach a class because you had 10 years of substitute teaching experience versus if you're applying for a solo exhibition, that might not necessarily be as applicable or strengthen your application. But having it all in one document is super helpful because rather than starting from the infamous blank piece of paper and having to remember everything, then all you have to do is delete what's not relevant. And that's so much easier and will save you so much time down the road. So by just doing a brain download, it will take time in the beginning to get this document started. But once you have it and you update it every 2 to 3 months, maybe even 6 months if you have limited opportunities currently, but having this document as your foundation of your business will save you so much time down the road and really take a huge roadblock off of applying for these amazing opportunities.
Yeah. I would also add to that, when you're putting this thing together, right? Having this, like Jackie mentioned, having this master CV. At least I personally, I tend to update it whenever I get accepted to something. So if I know it's happening, because then in the excitement of getting ready for an exhibition, I may forget. And then I'm like, what was it called? What was it? I mean, I'll know, but I do like to update it, quite frequently. And yeah, I think it's an awesome document. And sometimes you'll get an application that will say 1 page. And having this master, you literally can copy paste and be like selected exhibitions. But
right. And that's a good point because you can, either update it as you get accepted to whether exhibitions or markets, or if you're featured in a news article or something, update it as that excitement hits. Or putting like a reminder in your calendar, whether once a month or once a quarter, to also just like make sure you didn't forget anything as a backup. Because within the hustle and bustle of opportunities also comes the preparation and then the execution of the events. So updating your CV might not be like the obvious first thing to do, but it can be part of the celebration too. Be like, I can add something to it, which is very exciting.
Yep. And worst case scenario, and I've done this, guilty, I've gotten better about it. If you are sharing these things on social media, you can always look at your post and be like, what was that exhibition? And then you scroll back and you're like, there it is, and then you just kind of add it. But yeah, if you keep it updated regularly, you'll be fine. That leads us to, last but not least, is going to be the About Me section. And honestly, for me, I feel like if you don't have any, and I mean none of these documents yet, the About Me might be a good place to start, simply because it's so brief, it's so short, and it's like the short and sweet version of what you're all about. So as with all of these documents, minus the CV, you may start with a giant brain download, giant sheet of paper, doesn't matter, printer paper, nothing fancy, just jotting down all these things, all these themes, experiences, things that you're drawing from when you create your art. But then from there, you can synthesize it to the most basic bits about what you are. Or maybe you're on the other end, right? I tend to do the more tons of words and then pick from there. You might be a 3-word kind of person and you already have them and then you're good. But essentially, you're going to, have this brief, versatile section, description you're going to create. And it's something that a lot of people put on their websites, usually in their About Me page, in the bottom of their newsletters.
Yeah.
If there's media articles, those journalists will ask, like, okay, what are the first, tell me in 2 sentences what you're all about.
Yeah, kind of like your very quick elevator pitch. Like, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I'm about.
Except you're not selling. That's like the biggest difference, which we'll talk about elevator pitches at some point in the future and Level Up, and possibly in the podcast as well. But it's very, very similar in the sense that, somebody comes up to you during an event and says, like, oh, I see you're an artist, but what do you do? What are you all about? It just kind of helps you. 3 to 5 sentences, and especially if you're more on the introverted side of things, it kind of helps you. You don't have to go, I don't know. You already know. You've already prepared this in advance.
Or the opposite reaction to where then you go into a 20-minute rant, brain downloading, word vomiting, everything that you ever. Oh, well, I'm doing this, and I kind of work with this, and then I explore this, and blah blah. And people are like, okay. People only have one of 2 reactions.
You literally have to think about it like, if you all have ever read anything about creating an article, for news, whatever, it's usually those first 3 to 5 sentences that capture the essence of what the rest is all about. Yeah. And if you give that little bit, and then the person you're talking to, let's say this is at an exhibition opening, then, you blurb this out, then they start asking questions, then that might be your cue as to where the conversation goes next. Mm-hmm. But if you say this and they're like, okay, thank you, and then they walk away, well, that was your cue then. You're done. And that's fine too. But instead of you going into 20 minutes of passionate conversation, my art is about a social cause, or it's about climate change, or it's just about making your home more beautiful, whatever it is, right? Before going to that soapbox, only to realize they weren't listening the whole time and then they just walked away anyways. Yeah, save yourself the time. Do the 3 to 5, see where the convo goes, then go from there.
Yeah.
In more practical terms, this can be written, if you're writing it down, in first person or third person. And then it will have elements from both your statement and your bio. So I feel like that's why I feel like a lot of times you can start with this, because then you can just have, again, the essence of it and then build upon it for your bio and your artist statement. And not only that, regardless, and this is something you mentioned earlier, Jackie, the words that you're using across all 3 blurbs, pieces of documents, etc., they need to match. They're part of the same story anyway. So it kind of gives you some of those words that then you can use across, maybe use a thesaurus. You don't have to regurgitate the same things exactly, but basically it gives you that base to go off. But anyways.
Right, exactly. Because it is part of your brand. It is part of creating that cohesive narrative and making sure that you as an artist and as a creator are sharing that consistent story with your audience.
Yep. And as we wrap this up, we have some takeaways from you. First thing I would say, very, very important, these are going to be ever evolving. Might as well, if you haven't yet, start with version 1.0 today. It's okay. It's okay. As you grow with your art, as you mature as a business owner, because if you're career minded, it's not just about the art, there's the business element. As your art itself, moves on into different directions, it's going to change. And that is absolutely fine. Might as well start with version 1.0 and tweak it as many times as necessary, perhaps at least every 6 months to a year, if not sooner. All these different documents, just give them a look over, see if they need a refresh. Sometimes they don't, so that's fine. Another one that I have for you is, which I did mention it earlier, definitely talk to other artists, see what their documents look like, get someone to spell check for you. Like it's okay, because sometimes we'll be so, oh, my thing is about this and that. Actually, I talk to non-artists as well now that I think about it. You get so into what your art is about, what you're all about, since a lot of this does have an introspective element to it. You kind of go into the nit grit, but then somebody else might read it and be like, so what's just juxtaposition? What's that word with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways, instead of making it all, pardon my French, artsy fartsy, you want that element of sophistication, but you also want, common Joe out there to also get it. So getting that feedback from others will kind of help you find, the right balance of words for you.
Right, exactly. And having these 4 documents, the artist statement, the artist bio, your CV, and your about me short will be super, super helpful to just have on hand. It will take a lot of time when you are first getting started, because you almost have to, like we were saying, you have to clarify your message. You have to clarify your thoughts and ideas. So if you're starting completely from scratch from a brand perspective, it will take time, but we just want to reassure you that it does get easier. You will evolve as you go. And having these on hand, even though it might feel stressful in the beginning, will save you so much time down the road, because these are documents, again, that will be requested by everyone. Galleries, publications, even having content to put within your newsletter or social media. These are documents that you're going to be able to pull from, and that having them ready to go, I feel like, will bring a lot of confidence to you as a career-minded artist, and really just save you time in your process and take one more roadblock away from being able to embrace these opportunities.
Yeah. And I just thought about a last thought too. You putting these things together, if you get to a point in your art where you're like, I don't even know what I'm all about, like, what's the point in all this? They can guide you back. You can go and look and be like, this is why I started in the first place. At least, things like your artist statement, and then might help you guide you back or pivot as needed. So anyways, that's all we have for today's episode. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this conversation.
As always, both of our blogs will be linked in the show notes. You can find episode notes and PDF resources that we mentioned today, including an outline of these 4 different documents.
Yeah, and if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share what you got out of this, you can definitely follow us on social media. I'm at Amain Art across all platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio across all platforms. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.